Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that connects every bite you take to the bigger world, sparking curiosity and inspiring you to ask more questions about the food on your plate. I am your host, Dana DePrima, and once a month I bring you an episode with a 10-minute roundup of what happened policy-wise that has an impact on your food. To be honest, it's hard to keep up right now. With executive orders and the rapid-fire actions from the new Department of Government Efficiency, the impact of this month's changes may not be fully realized until later. February has been a whirlwind for U.S. agriculture and food policy. The confirmation of new leadership at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Health and Human Services, major funding freezes, a worsening bird flu outbreak, and rising trade tensions all have direct consequences for farmers and our food system. Today, we'll break down the most important events of the month and what they mean for the future of food security and farming in the United States. Let's dive in. There's new leadership at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services. Let's talk about what that means. The U.S. Senate confirmed Brooke Rollins as the Secretary of Agriculture, signaling a shift toward deregulation and a push to eliminate traditional farm subsidies. Rollins has stated that the United States must find another way to make farmers profitable without subsidies. While Rollins has made it clear that she wants to reduce reliance on government aid, she has yet to outline specific alternatives for how farmers will remain financially viable in an industry that relies on stable pricing and insurance safety nets. I'm going to link a previous episode where agricultural historian Jonathan Koppes talks about the origin of our agricultural subsidies and how he thinks that they could use some retooling. So what does this mean for farmers? The USDA currently distributes over $30 billion annually in farm subsidies, including crop insurance, disaster relief, and conservation funding. If these subsidies are cut, small and mid-sized farmers will be hit the hardest, while large agribusinesses are better positioned financially to survive. Livestock and grain producers, especially those relying on federal conservation programs, could struggle to adapt. RFK Jr. has been confirmed as the Health and Human Services Secretary, and a lot of people are wondering if this is a win specifically for small farmers. While Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a controversial figure due to his stance on vaccines and alternative medicine, many small farmers are optimistic about his appointment. He has long advocated for regenerative farming, stricter pesticide regulations, and reducing chemical inputs in food production. Here's why some farmers and consumers are hopeful. RFK Jr. opposes glyphosate, the key ingredient in Roundup, and has supported legal action against Bayer and Syngenta, citing public health risks. His Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA initiative, includes stricter food labeling laws and a push for nutrient-dense, minimally processed foods, which could benefit small farmers and organic producers. The biggest unknown? How RFK's positions will translate into actual policy and whether he'll be able to push through meaningful changes in an administration that is largely pro-corporate agriculture. Now let's talk about the USDA Spending Freeze. Many of our farmers are left in limbo. The USDA put a hold on billions of dollars in grants and loans, leaving many farmers scrambling. Here's what's happening. Farmers who had been approved for infrastructure grants and loan programs are now unable to access their funds. For example, Nate Powell Palm, an organic grain farmer in Montana, planned to build a $648,000 feed mill with USDA funding, but his project is now frozen indefinitely, leaving many of the farmers he was working with in limbo as well. More often, farmers, as a part of their agreement with the USDA, have already spent planned funds on approved projects and are awaiting contractual reimbursements that will probably never come. Imagine having a $30,000 unplanned expenditure with no hope for reimbursement when you already live really close to the margins. So, what are farmers doing? They're pivoting and looking for other ways to make up for the shortages. They're scrambling, and many of them are considering closing up shop. Others are traveling to Washington, D.C. to demand action. The bottom line is that farmers in communities across the country are forced to put off projects that would have improved productivity, efficiency, and local food supply chains. Let's turn to the bird flu crisis, to egg prices, and to an upcoming Department of Justice investigation. We've talked about this before. Over 160 million chickens have been lost due to the latest avian flu outbreak. When one chicken tests positive for avian flu, all of the chickens in the barn must be culled. Next week, we're going to talk to a new company that is poised to help farms detect and prevent the spread of avian flu. Solutions are popping up amid the despair and loss of flocks, big and small. Egg prices have skyrocketed and grocery stores are facing major shortages. In January 2025, the average cost for a dozen grade A large eggs was $4.95, marking an 80-cent per dozen increase since the year before. Reports from all across the U.S. are confirming even higher prices for a dozen eggs. The chicken and egg story doesn't end here. The U.S. Department of Justice has initiated an investigation into potential antitrust violations among major egg producers, including Cal-Maine Foods and Rose Acre Farms, examining whether companies have conspired to inflate prices by limiting supply. Consumers facing high egg prices are exploring interesting alternatives, including plant-based substitutes made from mung beans and tofu-based options. Additionally, resources offering egg-free recipes are gaining popularity as households seek to manage grocery expenses. Some consumers resorted to buying eggs on Facebook Marketplace to avoid high prices. President Trump recently suggested that everyone should get their own chickens to fight back against rising egg prices. I could not help but picture a flock of hens roosting on the terraces of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in New York City. Maybe Mar-a-Lago's golf courses will become the next big free-range farm. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has announced a $1 billion investment to address the avian flu crisis and stabilize egg prices. This plan includes $500 million for enhanced biosecurity measures, $400 million in financial relief for affected farmers, and $100 million dedicated to vaccine research and regulatory adjustments. We'll talk about this in depth next week when we hear about the expertise and strategy of one company to address the issue. Let's move to trade wars. These can really give you whiplash. The truth is that whether they are on or off and at what level is nearly beside the point. The anxiety and uncertainty for farmers and consumers is intense, and it's nearly impossible to plan for crops and livestock with the price of inputs and the status of foreign consumers so up in the air. New U.S. tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China are raising costs for farmers who rely on international markets. China has responded by slapping tariffs on U.S. pork, beef, soybeans, and dairy. We've seen this before. When China imposed tariffs on U.S. soybeans in 2018, prices plummeted, devastating many Midwestern farms. The unpredictability of trade wars leaves farmers unable to plan for the future. Canada has responded as well, with tariffs on U.S. goods as high as 25% across the board, an increase that has many farmers who rely not only on inputs from Canada, but also on Canadian neighbors as customers, in a tailspin. Farmers warn that trade disruptions could drive down commodity prices and make it harder to stay afloat. The bottom line? Farmers already struggling with high input costs, feed for livestock, for example, now face an even more uncertain market. We can attach this issue back to RFK's confirmation. I wonder if he will be effective in getting in the middle of this really important conversation that's playing out in the courts right now, the fight over glyphosate and corporate immunity. Bayer and Syngenta are pushing for legal immunity from lawsuits related to glyphosate exposure. RFK Jr. has been directly involved in legal battles against Bayer and Syngenta, representing plaintiffs in lawsuits alleging that glyphosate exposure causes cancer. Now, as HHS Secretary, he may have a stronger platform to challenge the EPA's stance that glyphosate is, quote, not likely to be carcinogenic. Several states, including Iowa and Missouri, are considering laws that would protect these pesticide companies from future lawsuits relating to the health of workers and cancer. With Rollins leading the USDA and RFK at HSS, expect a fierce policy battle over pesticide regulations in the coming months. February 2025 was a pivotal month for your food and for farming policy. New leadership, budget cuts, price hikes, and legal fights are reshaping the agricultural landscape. I hear from listeners all the time with this one question: what can I do? Here are some quick thoughts. You can support local farmers by buying directly from them. You can shop from your local farmers market, get the freshest food around, but also know how much of a difference that small action makes to the farmers you shop from regularly. You can stay informed. Policies definitely impact what's on your plate. You can count on One Bite is Everything to address and summarize the key events each month here in about 10 minutes. What's more, these changes are not beyond your grasp. In a recent cautionary tale about a small farm in New Hampshire, you saw the impact of local regulations and their lack of clarity on a small farm and its community. You can always get involved at the local level, or at least find out what is on the books in your local area that supports the food you want to eat. Accountability from policymakers and big agribusinesses. Get to know your local farmers. I am your host, Dana DePrima, and I'm so glad you're here. If this episode got you thinking or caught you up on some of the recent happenings in agricultural policy that impacts the food on your plate, share it, leave a review, and make sure you follow One Bite is Everything in your podcast listening app so you don't miss an episode. Tune in next week for an insider's look at solutions to rising egg prices and avian flu, and an upcoming episode that will give you some tips and strategies for supporting local farmers and making your own life a little bit more local. And remember, every bite you take is connected to something bigger. Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and I will see you next time, right here on One Bite is Everything.